Why she won't tell you directly. There is a particular kind of heaviness that settles into your chest when you begin to sense that someone you deeply love is gradually pulling away. It is not a sharp, sudden pain. It is something softer and slower, like a light dimming so gradually you wonder if your eyes are playing tricks on you. Your heart tends to recognize these shifts long before your rational mind is willing to acknowledge them. You begin to notice things. The messages feel hollow compared to what they once were. The rhythm of your conversations has changed in ways you cannot quite articulate. Even the silence between you feels different, cooler, less familiar. You reassure yourself that it is nothing. You tell yourself you are reading too much into it, but underneath all of that reassurance lives a quiet certainty that something has fundamentally shifted. That inner knowing becomes harder and harder to talk yourself out of. Most people assume that when a relationship ends, there will be a clear moment, a conversation, a declaration, a door closing with force. But that is rarely how it unfolds. In reality, people leave emotionally long before they leave physically. Their investment dwindles. The warmth they once offered becomes thinner, more rationed. What used to feel like a two-way exchange starts to resemble a one-way road, where only you are moving toward the other person. And because this process is so gradual, many of us spend months, sometimes years, trying to hold close a version of someone that has already evolved into someone else entirely. I want to walk through this with you today, as someone who genuinely cares about where you land. We are going to look at 3 of the most significant signs that someone has quietly decided they no longer want to share your journey. These are not easy signs to recognize, and they are even harder to accept. But understanding them clearly can free you from the habit of turning every bit of their distance into a reflection of your own shortcomings. It can help you stop reaching towards someone who is already stepping back, and help you see your situation with the clarity and honesty it deserves. Sign 1. Your emotions stop mattering to her. The first signal, and often the one that starts the whole unraveling, is when the other person no longer seems affected by how their behavior lands on you. This shift rarely announces itself loudly. It seeps in slowly, the way cold air finds its way through the smallest crack in a window. When someone genuinely values your presence in their life, your emotional experience is something they actively hold in their mind. They feel the weight of accidentally hurting your feelings. They notice when their words have left you feeling diminished. Even in moments of disagreement, they handle the connection carefully because the idea of damaging it frightens them. They are not perfect, no one is, but protecting how you feel is something they prioritize without being asked. Now watch what happens when someone begins emotionally withdrawing. Suddenly, your feelings are no longer something they take seriously. Worse, your feelings start to feel inconvenient to them, an obstacle rather than something worth tending to. They stop offering explanations. They stop trying to restore your sense of security when you feel unsettled. They stop caring whether their actions leave you confused or quietly devastated. Conversations that once ended with warmth and mutual understanding now conclude with a wall of cold detachment. You ask a simple question and receive a clipped reply, or nothing at all. This is precisely where many deeply caring people turn the blame inward. They begin to wonder if they are too sensitive, too needy, too demanding for simply wanting to feel seen by someone who claims to love them. I need you to hear this clearly. Wanting basic emotional care from a person in your life is not an unreasonable request. It is the minimum standard for any meaningful connection. When someone truly wants you around, you feel settled in their presence. When they are quietly exiting, You feel perpetually off balance. That disorientation is not a flaw in you. It is a signal. What makes this particularly painful is that the person may still be physically present. They may still sit across from you at a table or respond to a message. The relationship, on the surface, still appears intact, and so people stay, because they are watching the form of the relationship while missing the absence of its substance. Someone can occupy the same room as you while being entirely unreachable emotionally. They can exchange words without any real investment behind them. They can share a meal with you and feel no genuine connection at all. When this becomes the pattern, you start spending your evenings rewinding your interactions, searching for the moment things went sideways. You notice that conversations that once left you feeling full and connected now leave you feeling strangely empty. You realize, in the quietest part of yourself, that you are the only one still tending this relationship, that without your effort, it would simply stop. Here is something worth keeping with you. People invest in what matters to them. If someone treasures a garden, they return to it regularly. If they care for a friendship, they guard it. If they love you, they protect the way you feel. So when someone repeatedly demonstrates through their behavior that your emotional experience is no longer relevant to them, trust what you are witnessing. Not their occasional reassurances, not the explanations they offer when pressed. The pattern, the steady, repetitive pattern of how they treat you, is telling you everything you need to know. Sometimes the clearest evidence that someone is finished is not anything they say. It is the indifference they carry while watching you hurt. Sign 2. Being around you no longer lights her up. The second sign emerges when the other person stops putting genuine energy into maintaining your connection. Every enduring relationship, whether a deep friendship or a lasting partnership, survives because both people wake up and choose each other, day after day. Initial feeling may ignite the spark, but it is ongoing effort and intentionality that keep the light alive across time. The early indicators are subtle. Messages become brief. The playfulness in their communication disappears. Conversations that once flowed naturally now feel stilted and effortful. Plans start getting postponed or abandoned altogether. The energy they once brought into moments shared with you has quietly gone elsewhere. And then you begin to notice a pattern that is difficult to name but impossible to ignore. You are always the one reaching first. You send the message, you ask how they are doing, you carry the conversational weight, you suggest the plan. Without consciously deciding to, you have become the sole keeper of something that was supposed to be shared. This is where many generous-hearted people get tangled. They find reasons to excuse the other person. They point to stress at work, difficult circumstances, a demanding season of life. They tell themselves things will return to normal soon. And sometimes, genuinely, sometimes that is true. People go through stretches where they are spread thin and depleted. But there is a meaningful distinction between someone who is temporarily overwhelmed and someone who has stopped caring about the bond between you. A person who values your connection will find ways, even small, imperfect ways, to let you know you still matter to them during their difficult times. The other kind simply stops trying, with no recognizable turning point and no repair attempt. A person who truly wants you present in their life may not always have the capacity to show up in big ways, but their desire to remain close to you does not waver. The quality of their effort might shift under the weight of a hard season, but their orientation towards you, the sense that losing you would cost them something real, remains constant. When that disappears, what you are witnessing is not a rough patch, it is a departure. This sign is particularly deceptive because there is rarely a defining rupture to point to. No confrontation, no formal ending, just a gradual thinning of presence and effort. And without a clear event to anchor the change, many people continue to hold on. They assume that if they become more loving, more accommodating, more willing to overlook, the connection will recover. But a relationship cannot sustain itself on the investment of one person indefinitely. You cannot carry something shared entirely on your own. At some point, the most honest thing you can do is look not at what they say when they sense your frustration, but at what they consistently do when no one is watching. Someone who wants to remain in your life will find their way back to you, even through noise, even through difficulty. When someone is done, the inverse becomes true. Being around you begins to feel like a task they have agreed to complete, rather than a joy they choose. Time with you gets shorter, thinner, easier to skip. You become the one holding the shape of the relationship together, while they contribute less and less to its structure. The moment of reckoning comes when you realize, if you simply stopped reaching out, the connection would dissolve. Not from any dramatic event, but from the quiet withdrawal of the only person still tending it. You were the one maintaining the warmth. They had stepped back from the fire long before you noticed. Sign 3. She stops making room for you in her future. The third sign is perhaps the most telling. When someone stops folding you into their vision of what is ahead. The future is where we hold the things we intend to keep. When someone loves you and wants you in their life, you appear naturally in their tomorrow, not because they make a calculated decision to include you, but because you have simply become part of how they see what is coming. They speak in language that assumes your presence. We, us, our. These words come easily because the idea of you not being there simply does not occur to them. They mention next summer. They reference something happening months from now. They assume, without ceremony, that you will be beside them for whatever comes next. Notice when this shifts. The future becomes vague. Plans stop materializing. Instead of building something together that extends beyond today, conversations become contained to the immediate moment. The horizon disappears, and rather than weaving a shared life forward, the other person quietly begins constructing a life with room only for themselves. This transformation is easy to miss, partly because it happens in the language of omission rather than declaration. People focus on the fact that the person is still here today, and fail to notice that they have stopped mentioning tomorrow. But the absence of future talk is one of the most honest indicators of where someone's heart has already landed. When they no longer picture you in what is coming, they have almost certainly already decided, somewhere beneath the surface of things, that you are not coming with them. This shift reframes everything, even when no one speaks it aloud. It changes the tone of time spent together. It changes the texture of a conversation. You might introduce a plan for next month and notice a hesitation, a vagueness, an avoidance of direct answer. What should feel like anticipation feels instead like resistance. Consider what growth looks like in a healthy relationship. It expands. People look forward. They talk about what they want to see and experience together. They bring each other into their plans without being prompted. This happens naturally because when someone genuinely wants you, your presence in their future requires no effort to imagine. When that stops happening, something foundational has changed. The relationship stops reaching forward and starts contracting into the present moment only. People almost never deliver this conclusion directly. They rarely sit down and say the words. Instead, they show it through the absence of building. They stop dreaming out loud with you. They stop making space. And when someone stops inviting you into their future, It generally means they have already quietly begun a version of it that does not include you. They have moved on in their mind and heart, even while their physical presence has not yet caught up. The door in their interior life has already closed, gently, quietly, without announcement. This creates one of the more painful dynamics in human experience. You are still living inside the relationship, while they are already planning what comes after it. What to hold on to? Before we close this conversation, I want to offer something important for context. A single difficult week does not define a relationship. A few cold days do not constitute a departure. People experience seasons of overwhelm, distraction, and emotional depletion. A connection with a strong foundation can withstand stretches of distance because the underlying care remains intact. Both people retain the impulse to find their way back to each other because the prospect of real loss carries genuine weight. Emotional withdrawal is something different in kind. It is not a temporary retreat. It is a prolonged fade. It manifests as a sustained loss of care, investment, and presence. The relationship begins to exist primarily in your hope and your determination to keep it alive. While you are working to sustain it, the other person grows increasingly comfortable in a role defined only by receiving. This is why so many good people arrive at a place of quiet exhaustion. They have been trying to repair something that the other person has already set down. They keep offering more love, more patience, more grace, expecting that at some point it will be enough to bring the other person back to who they were. But the truth is that two people are required to begin a relationship, and two people are equally required to keep it. Singular effort has a limit, no matter how extraordinary the effort is. Perhaps the most difficult acceptance any of us will face is this: you cannot manufacture someone else's desire for you. You cannot earn your way into being valued through suffering or through remarkable levels of patience and self-sacrifice. Many people remain in these situations for years because they carry the belief that if they are simply enough, gentle enough, understanding enough, present enough, the person will return to who they used to be. That belief, however loving it is in its origin, keeps them anchored to a version of the relationship that no longer exists. They are grieving not what they currently have, but what they once shared and what they had hoped was still possible. Healing begins with an honest look at the present. When you stop chasing someone who is walking away, space opens up. Space to see yourself and the situation without the distortion of constant hoping. You begin to disentangle your worth from their withdrawal. You understand that your value was never diminished by their diminishing investment. You are still whole. What you offer is still real and worthy of being received. Nothing about you changed simply because their willingness to see you changed. Where to go from here? As we bring this to a close, carry this with you. When someone genuinely wants to share your life, you will not spend the majority of your days searching for proof that you matter to them. You will not be decoding signals or wondering where you stand. You will not be the sole engine of a connection that requires two engines to run. Real relationships are not without friction or difficulty, but they are characterized by mutual investment. Two people who genuinely choose each other consistently and without extensive negotiation. When you recognize that someone has stopped honoring how you feel, stopped showing up with any real effort, and stopped including you in the life they are building, take that information seriously. You do not have to act on it immediately, but do not argue yourself out of what you can clearly see. One of the most quietly devastating things we do is attempt to hold tightly to someone who has already released their grip. We continue seeking honesty from someone who has stopped being forthcoming. We keep looking for the love that used to be there in a heart that has quietly reorganized itself. And in the process of all that searching, we can lose track of ourselves entirely. If these signs are present in your life right now, do not spiral into panic, but do not look away either. Honor yourself enough to see the situation as it actually is. The people who are right for your life will not be without their own imperfections and challenges, but they will never make you feel foolish or burdensome for loving them fully. You deserve someone who holds your place in their life with the same care you hold theirs. Someone who recognizes your value and does not have to be persuaded to keep it close. Someone whose love does not leave you perpetually questioning whether you are doing something wrong simply by wanting real closeness with another person. These 3 signs are not meant to dishearten you. They are meant to orient you, to offer you permission to stop maintaining something that only you are still maintaining, to remind you that love in its truest form is not a solitary road walked in the hope that someone ahead will eventually slow down and wait. When you are finally able to accept that someone has already moved on, you create room for the people who will stay, who will meet you at the same point of effort, who will hold you with the same steadiness and care you are so generously prepared to offer. That person and that love is worth saving yourself for.